Streaming live via the Internet. Welcome to ISP Radio, your weekly source for ISP-related news, events, and interviews with industry experts. If you deliver Internet via fiber optic, wireless, coax, or any other way, you're in the right place. Chat live with us weekly via ispradio.com every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central Time. And now a brief word from our sponsors. Link Technologies, providing ISP consulting, support, and hardware for wireless ISPs. TowerCoverage.com, providing online RF coverage maps. Mimosa Networks, providing high-density, high-bandwidth radio products. Advanced LLC, providing retail and wholesale advanced communication services by matching providers with your bandwidth needs. And by Sitel, providing reliability in surge suppression. And now your host for ISP Radio, Steve Graybill and Dennis Burgess.
Welcome to another edition of ISP Radio. I'm your host, Steve Graybill, broadcasting from Moriarty, New Mexico, and I have on the show with me and my co-host and producer of the show, Dennis Burgess, is in Missouri. He's been buried with work going on. Out here in New Mexico, we just got through a horrific rainstorm, which was wonderful, and knock on wood, even though the gear gets submerged in water, it stayed up and running. I don't see how people in Portland and Seattle and Florida keep their stuff running, because here in New Mexico it's typically pretty dry, so we don't have the water problems that I'm sure a lot of other ISPs around the country have. But today it looks like it's clearing up a little bit, and going to have a good day, real busy. The next couple weeks I'm going to be taking a vacation. Can you imagine that? ISP owner going on vacation. Well, I made the time to do it. So I'll be out of pocket for the next couple weeks. So go ahead, Dennis.
I said I hope you have internet, right?
Yeah, I'll have internet.
You know, you get on these cruise ships, pay $195 for an hour and a half of internet now.
Unfortunately, I'm not going on a cruise. Me and my wife are going to London, England for a couple of weeks to see the country. She really wanted to go there, so I said, okay, let's go there. She needed the time off, and I needed a little break, too. All work and no play makes me boring.
There you go. Nothing wrong with that. Yeah, I mean, you have to have time off a little bit, at least somewhere, anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I trust me, totally understand that.
Have you had any time to take a vacation away from the business at all, Dennis?
Not a whole lot. I mean, we keep busy. I've taken a little bit and such. You take days here or there. Yesterday we were busy, but I finished one of the projects early, so I hit the golf course yesterday afternoon. So it was it's a beautiful day here, actually.
I think all that weather that hit us is heading your way, so I think...
Don't say that.
So how do people in these wet environments get away from not having submerged equipment problems?
Well, I mean, it's all about the installation. I mean, most of the installations that we would do here, I mean, in Missouri, we get some nice thunderstorms, quite a bit of rain and weather, ice. We also get, obviously, snow. But it's all about the installation. And 99% of the time, you get your tower gear. Most of the stuff that we deploy is all Microtech, and it's all hardened anyway. Mm-hmm. So, the weather, the heat, that doesn't really bug it. As far as rain, really the only issue you would have is, obviously you have to have proper NEMA enclosures for that rain. Link Technologies, as a matter of fact, we just started selling, we had these custom enclosures made, all aluminum, NEMA certified, all that kind of good stuff. And we had them made because we needed a very specific size that we could put some rack mount gear in, that type of stuff, as well as rack mount, and of course it's sealed and everything like that. The only other thing you have is like any LMR cabling, but most of the gear that we use for the most part nowadays will be integrated as far as your sectors and your CPEs.
Yeah.
So you don't really have to worry about weather. I mean, it's just a weather grommet for your Cat 5 pass through. Everything else, if they are, it's just you have to follow the standard waterproofing procedures that anybody would do to ensure waterproofing of the cables. And there's lots of ways of doing that. We actually have a document. I believe if you go to linktex.net/DL, there is a PDF there, how to properly waterproof. Everybody can download that if they want to. And it's actually an old document. We've had it for a good little while. But if you pretty much follow that directions, or you follow the directions on there, You pretty much won't have any type of water intrusion issues if you do it right. It's usually the people that are trying to cut corners, or they're trying to hurry or rush, and that's where you get that. And that's just, with using some type of mastic, courtesy wraps, all that kind of good stuff, to make sure you have a good connection. There is also another product by 3M. I'm pretty sure 3M makes it. And I think it's a cable wrap. I'd have to Google it and try to find it. But they make a number of products that have mastic built into it that snap on and easier to remove and such for those LMR cables. But in most cases nowadays, we just don't use LMR like the cell carriers. With the cell carriers, they're running huge LMR up the tower typically. Some of the new installations now, though, they're actually putting their radios at the top instead of the bottom, because they're finding out that they have better signal that way. Imagine that. So, it is what it is, but as long as you have that proper waterproofing, you shouldn't have a big issue at all.
Mm-hmm. No, and I'm guilty of having old equipment out there with LMR, a microtick with a in-female male connector, and then during one of the last storms, I got some water intrusion and was out at the site 3 times and ended up replacing the LMR because obviously water had gotten in it, and that fixed it. But
yeah, once you get water in it, you're screwed. There's no way. I mean, it's not like you're running an FM station that you're putting 100,000 watts into the cable.
Yeah.
A lot of those companies. I mean, when you put that much power into it, the water kind of just disappears. You got a little power going through it, but in our stuff, once you get water in it, it has to be replaced.
So tell me a little bit about that can that you're talking about. Is it like you said rack mount? It's a NEMA 3R, so you can put, the
enclosure, you mean?
Cloud core in it? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Let me see. I'm gonna pull up the specs on it. That way, I'm not, saying the wrong thing.
And the other thing, too, is have you heard of ISPs using Pelican boxes with microticks in them? I
have heard people do that. We don't, but I have heard people. I mean, I'll be honest with you, and I'm going to just sit there and tell you right now, is that, I have seen everything. I have seen the proverbial Home Depot plastic boxes up on towers with Linksys routers in them, with radios coming out of them. I mean, I've seen it. As far as outdoor enclosures, I mean, if you're putting it up on the tower, you should be in a NEMA-rated box. We sell a number of different products. They've been an industry standard for many, many years. But you have things like the DCHE and the DCE. They're die-cast enclosures. The DCHE has hinges, seal on it, so that when you close it, you can seal. It has the knockouts, etc., for your end connectors already, and your end connectors should have your gaskets already on them. So, I mean, there's a lot better ways of putting something on a tower. Plus, they have a mounting backplate so that you can ensure that you have, the proper standoffs and all that kind of stuff. And, we here at Link Technologies, we do that. We put all those together, so when you get it, all you have to do is plug in a Cat 5 and screw on the end connector if that's what you want.
Right.
But, the rack enclosure I was really talking about, even though I have seen them up on towers, they're kind of big. They're actually 24 by 24.5 by 17. Okay. Rack mount, I don't know, maybe 15U tall. I mean, it's 24 inches tall or so. But what's really nice about it is, you can put a cloud core in there. We have options. It has vents already in it. It has you can add the vent fan, a 4-inch 105 CFM vent fan on it. And you can definitely find those. We usually ship them. It's what's really nice, and we've been having issues with this with our customers asking for a product, and that's why we make this, is that we get a lot of these new cell providers and tower owners that they don't want anything that can rust on the tower. So that basically gives you, now you're basically at basically aluminum or stainless steel or galvanized. And galvanized, you can knock off the it can fall off, and you drill into it. Now it has a rust point. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So what we did is we decided, hey, let's go a little higher quality. We put this in an all-aluminum enclosure. The whole thing's aluminum, has a lock on it, has the vent fan, the fan has a temperature sensor on it, so it only kicks in when needed.
Cool.
Has a back plate in the thing so that you can pull that back plate out. Here's your power supply for your vent fan. Here's anything else you want to put on the back plate. If you want to put a DIN rail, you can in the back. And then closer to the front, you have the actual rack mount ears so that you can go ahead and grab various items as well. Just so you know, John's calling in, so we're going to bring him on the line here. He's running a little late. Let's see if I can join him. Oh, I missed the button. Here we go. We'll get him on here. But those products are definitely there and such. And we built that. Like I said, it can be mounted to a pole. It can be mounted. We have a lot of people just use Unistrut across the back. A lot of times you get at your tower site installations an instance where you have to put your own power. You have to bring your own power. So what we do is we put you put two poles on the ground, you put Unistrut across them, and then this enclosure, this tower enclosure, can mount on one side, and then on the back side, that's where you have your electrical company come in. Here's your meter bucket, and here's your breaker panel that you have to have. And then it's just a short little run to this enclosure. But it's all aluminum, so you don't have to worry about it rusting or anything like that. If you need to drill holes for pass-throughs or anything, you can do so, etc. And like I said, it's still vented. So we have some customers, they'll put a CCR at the top and maybe a one of the, like we sell a lot of the Netronics switches or the PoE mid-spans. Take your pick. Take one of those. We put those in there. And then you have your power on your back plane, and then at the very bottom they'll actually put a battery or two in there. And since it's vented, the batteries can be vented if needed, etc. So we do sell those. You can go to linktex.net. If you go to there, you just type the easiest way. Just type outdoor rack mountable enclosure or outdoor enclosure or something like that, and it'll come up in the search pretty easily. We do have some shipping savings, because they are 24 by 24 by 17. You will probably want to buy. We get a lot of people that buy 4 at a time because they fit on a pallet that way. And it costs, since they're a whopping like 18, 19 pounds or something like that, they're not heavy. It costs the same to ship 4 of them on one pallet as it does one.
Right.
So we can ship them via UPS, but they're kind of big and bulky for UPS. And if you buy 4 at a time or 8 at a time, etc., it's usually just simpler to do that. You know what I'm saying?
And what you're saying is like these would sit down at the base of a tower, and then you run your Cat 5s up to the equipment.
Yeah. This is where you would put your battery system, UPS, whatever it may be, where you'd put your power injection. So whether it be a Netronics type switch or a mid-span product, any of your Cat 5 surge suppression can go on it if you need to, and then any type of routers that you may need or switching gear can fit in it just fine. It's deep enough that most gear will fit in it. All your cloud cores, all your 1100Hs, all that kind of stuff will rack mount nice and pretty, keep it off, and then it still has room in the front for you to run your cabling, of course, as well.
What about grounding? Is there integrated grounding bus bar or something in that can?
There is nothing in it, but remember there's that back plane, remember? Mm-hmm. So is there a back plate, basically 4 screws. The back plate comes off. You can drill whatever you want. You can build it however you want if that's what you need. Gotcha. You know what I'm saying? And keep in mind it's aluminum, so usually you have a ground to the enclosure anyway. Mm-hmm. You really don't want to make the enclosure your primary ground. You still want to have a bar, etc., but it does usually have a ground wire from it to a good ground.
Right.
So, well, we got John came on the line.
John, you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Hey, there he is.
Well, on today's show, we've got John Brown of CityLink Fiber in Albuquerque. He's on the phone with us today. And the topic of conversation is last week we had Frank Ortman on the line, and he was giving us insight of why Title II is good for us as ISPs. And I got more from the conversation why it's good for the customer, the end user, than I really did of how it's going to benefit me as an ISP. And John so kindly came on the show today, to talk to us about why Title II may be or may not be beneficial to us as ISPs. And I've had conversations with him on this at length. And I thought he'd be a great person to offer the other side because he is a small business ISP. He's a WISP, and he runs a fiber optic network. So with that, John, you're there, right?
I'm here in spirit, that's for sure.
So, John, tell us why Title II can be good for us.
Well, I'll start off with simply saying that, there is no single piece of legislation I've ever seen that is perfect, where everybody agrees and everybody comes together holding hands and says, hallelujah, we all 100% agree on it.
Kumbaya.
Is Title II, kumbaya, baby, we are the world. Is the current legislation, or I should say current rulemaking coming out of the FCC, the panacea perfect? No, it's not. But I think that the FCC needs to be commended for their efforts in trying to do something as opposed to letting large service providers control who has access to what content and what fees that might have to be paid extra to get that content. And there's just a lot of problems there. It's a complicated subject. There are glimmering pieces of really wonderful things in this ruling, which I'm going to talk about in a second. But, first thing I would say is that anybody who's not completely read the 500-plus pages of this document should find a really big, huge, tall cup of their favorite drink, whether it's hot or cold or out of the bottle straight, and read the whole thing. There's a lot of forbearance in there. There's a lot of stuff in there where smaller WISPs, like the one you run, Steve, and the one I run, there's a conversation in there that says that we're going to be forbeared against having a lot of these other rules added to us. And I suspect that there will be some fine-tuning. Anyway, with all that said, the last little piece I'll say generally is that, if you're not a member of WISPA, the Wireless ISP Association, you need to become a member of WISPA and voice your concerns specifically to WISPA so that their legislative folks can do their job in Washington and try to help make this thing a bit better. Anyway, enough of a plug for WISPA. They're a great organization, and everyone should be a member. The biggest thing that I saw in this bill, in this rulemaking from the FCC that made me sort of get up and dance the little happy giddy joy dance was that the FCC is going to include as part of our privileges Rule 224, if I've got the number right, which is basically can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay. I was getting text messages and it's from Steve, and I wasn't sure if that was the right one. Okay, anyway. So 224 gives us pole attachment. And pole attachment is a great thing. The way you used to get pole attachment was you had to go become a CLEC, a competitive local exchange carrier. And I don't want to be a CLEC. I know Steve doesn't want to be a CLEC, and I would suspect that most of our other wireless ISPs don't want to have to become a CLEC. There you have to file tariffs. You have to file regulatory documents on everything that you serve and the prices that you want to offer, and you have to get permission to charge those prices. And when you want to change those prices, you have to get permission again. And the CLEC world can be much more burdensome than what we are now seeing with this net neutrality rulemaking. But without being a CLEC, you couldn't get on a pole. Well, why do you care about getting on a pole? Well, I care about getting on poles because I want to string fiber cable on the poles because it's a heck of a lot cheaper than stringing fiber cable underground, cutting trenches or doing directional boring or micro trench or what have. And in neighborhoods where I want to hook up fiber to the home, it's a lot cheaper to do that last mile access network, that final distribution network to the homes via an aerial drop than it is via an underground connection. Well, the other thing that's really cool, I mean, fiber is great, but hey, we're a WISP. We're not doing fiber. Well, guess what? As a wireless provider, the big guys, i.e. T-Mo and AT&T and Verizon and so forth, those guys are able to mount cellular antennas on the top of power poles. Well, we're all now in one big happy family. And so we, as WISPs, could very easily start mounting radios on top of power poles as part of 224 for pole attachment. And now in a community, you could start getting better density of wireless distribution by building, smaller cell sites and not necessarily having to go on to an American Towers or Crown Castle or build your own tower or anything else. You can go on top of a power pole. There's precedent for it. The FCC supports it. The power companies have been told by the district court and by the appellate courts that they must allow this to happen, and they are adjusting their procedures and processes to make that happen. So from a WISP perspective, I see that that's even a wonderful opportunity. You could then do a hybrid and marry the two of these ideas by putting, let's say, a small 18 gig or 24 gig microwave link at the end of a community development that's a backhaul, and then come off of that radio and go into these cabinets and things that I think that Dennis was just talking about a little earlier, and then run fiber down those poles to start serving homes. So now you could aggregate a whole bunch of customers in via fiber back to a wireless connection that goes back to your network. Yeah, 4 months ago, we couldn't do that.
Well, I want to make sure I point this out, and not saying this is not important to you, because I know it is. In our area, and in many areas, that was already possible.
True. Some states are more enlightened than other states.
I understand. Because, I mean, here in Missouri, it takes us, we have to send an installer or somebody that would attach the poles to a 6-hour course that costs like $800 with the local power company. Mm-hmm. Once they take that, they now, it's more a safety briefing for them, as well as here's the proper tools to attach to poles that we want you to use, and here's the proper procedure to basically say that you need to use these poles. I mean, everything you have to go, I want to run from here to here, here's all my pole numbers, and they have to request access to verify that they're not overloaded or anything. Right. Usually that takes 30 days or less. That gets done, and now you can have your own guy go out and install just like that. And I'm not saying that it is very good to have that in a nationwide order. I can already tell you, though, is that some of my customers have already gotten pushback from various companies, both co-ops as well as private companies, specifically stating, well, we're private, so you don't have to, or we're a co-op, so we don't have to follow those orders. So obviously it's going to come down to the courts again. It's not just hey, magically it works. I'm hoping it works of that better, but really I think besides the poles are okay. But what I really like also is it specifically says ducts, conduits, and rights of way.
Yes, sir.
And that
Absolutely.
Actually is more important, because the rights of way is something that normally, that even though you can get access to the poles through the power company, a right-of-way is not something that normally you get access to. Now you have to go to the state or county, say I need to have access to it, and the very first thing they say is, are you CLEC or are you a utility? Why aren't you? And that's where that issue comes from. But again, I think that we're still going to have the issue is that a number of these people and number of these companies, etc., are not going to just magically give it to you. The last one that I really like I'm just going to toss out here as well, is I know everybody likes fiber. I know a number of people that love coax. They think, sure. You look at the latest DOCSIS standard. I mean, you can easily get 600 meg per channel down or not per channel, but per segment downstream. And that's a significant amount of bandwidth, and coax taps and transmission coax and the amps, etc., are fairly inexpensive in the grand scheme of things, especially whenever you start hitting fusion splicers and when you look at fiber. I'm not sitting there saying, obviously fiber is going to be better because it's typically 1-to-1, but a lot of times you get GPON solutions as well. But the point being, though, is that we have also this cable franchise stuff that's been going on. And this is a whole other issue where I think we're going to have, again, the court's going to come up and say, hey, I want to put cable up as an internet access right away under the FCC order. And again, someone's going to say, oh, no, you can't do that because we already have a cable franchise here. Well, it doesn't matter.
But we're not cable TV.
I understand that, but you're talking to politicians. Politicians, all they see is coax, or all they see is cable. That's all they see.
Right.
They don't understand the difference. And what's going to happen is it's going to end up going up. You're going to have to basically get your lawyer involved. The people who's going to win on all this is the lawyers anyway.
Yes. Yep.
But I can see that happening quite a bit all over the country.
Well, I mean, so the big thing is that I think there's already precedent that you can run, that the physical layer one medium that media that you are running is separated from the type of service that is being provided. If you are providing TV video service, a la a cable television company, then there are federal and state rules that discuss what you need to do as a cable TV operator. If all you are providing is an IP pipe or some sort of an Ethernet pipe, and you happen to be using a two-wire solution that is circular and physical construction, I don't think you're going to run into as much of a problem. Coax, DOCSIS 3.1 that just came out, Comcast is jumping up and down and saying how wonderful that is because they're going to be able to start doing gigabit services over DOCSIS 3.1. But there are other companies that have cable-based solutions that aren't necessarily DOCSIS, but use that cable, that wire, for transmitting some form of framed data. The big thing here that the FCC has given us is they have given us a fairly good-sized clue-by-four that we can start using to smack the other guys. I mean, I'll give an example. I'm going to be slightly vague because I have some NDAs that I have to be vague about. But I know of a service provider that once upon a time had asked for pole attachment, and because they weren't a CLEC, they were basically summarily dismissed without so much as even, a buy or leave kind of thing. Bye-bye, gone, no, we don't have to do this. And the answer was that particular power company had no legal basis there was no legal basis or grounds for them to even consider the application. Now, with this new ruling, the answer back was, oh, sure, yes, we see where you are, and we see that you are classified that way. We will get you our pole attachment agreement and get that all taken care of and move right along happy and nice-like. And the point there is that before, if that service provider had shown up and said that they were a CLEC, they would have gotten a favorable answer then. Today, they got a favorable answer because we are, that provider is a broadband provider. Dennis is absolutely right about conduits and duct and right-of-way, because effectively we are now getting treated as a utility in the sense of being access to public utility easements, whether they are on private land or whether they are on public or in some sort of replatted development, etc. It makes it a lot easier for us to go down that road. And I would suspect that it'll even give us some capabilities for those of us that really want to go spend the money with the lawyers. It'll give us, some of us, the capability to actually go get either a co-location or an interconnect agreement with another carrier, which could be leveraged in such a way as to enable folks access to transport circuitry and transport out of rural areas at a more cost-effective basis. With regards to the co-ops, some of the folks that I've been talking to, the FCC is getting ready to revise the 2011 pole attachment order and make it more friendly and solve some problems that have come up since 2011. And one of those problems that's come up has been the co-op issue, and where co-ops have large chunks of rural America. And it's their opinion, the FCC's opinion from a national policy perspective, that, co-ops are controlling potential access to large parts of rural America. And from a national policy perspective, we want to be able to get broadband to rural America. So I'm wondering and I'm thinking that the co-ops might start getting a significant amount of pressure to allow people onto their poles so that broadband service can get out there. And they may not necessarily be able to stand up and say, well, we're excluded because we're a co-op. I think there's going to be some changes there.
Well, I got a question in particular to tie to that, as well as last week when we were talking with Frank Ortman, he talked about government-funded ductworks and dark fibers and stuff like that. John's in New Mexico here, and John knows that along the freeway, I-40, we've got extensive state-owned ducts and fiber that's just sitting there not being utilized, and it could be utilized, and that ties into the co-op. Most co-ops are funded by the federal government in some way through loans or whatever, and my question is do you believe in this order that we will be able to have access to that state-owned facility even though we're paying for it? And the other thing, too, is guys, pole attachments aren't free, as we all know. You're going to pay something to be on that pole, but at least it opens it up so we can deliver higher capacity solutions.
It gives us more tools in the toolbox.
Right.
And just as a vendor use Shooting Star M5 radio isn't the perfect answer for all things. It's a good solution for many things. And somebody else's radio might be the better solution for a particular problem. So, there is no silver bullet. You have to look at a toolbox of ways of getting to the end result, which is getting that broadband connection to the customer. And more importantly, getting them to write the check and pay you every month.
Right.
But I think, Steve, to your point, one of the places that we're going to start seriously working here in Mexico on is, because of the federal rulemaking from the FCC, is actually going to the state and saying, oh, you have conduit that goes from Albuquerque through the Tijeras Canyon. That conduit is open and empty. We want access to that right away. We want access to that duct. But not only is it just that the state has that duct or county has that duct, but CenturyLink has that duct too. CenturyLink in some parts has a fairly extensive duct and conduit bank. And so now, do we get access to that? And I think we're going to be pushing that envelope to see if we do.
Right, because a lot of that was funded under ARA.
A lot of it was funded under ARA, and I think we have to be smart about knowing what things were funded under ARA, and using the spotlight laws that we now have. In New Mexico, we have what's called an IPRA, or an Inspection of Public Records Act, and the state is rapidly learning that they can't really play with those too much, because the fines against the state are pretty huge if they actually don't respond in a timely manner and they don't actually produce the records. So I think that it would make sense to spend a little bit of the money on IPRAs to the state, saying, okay, please tell us all of the ARA funding that was used and what it was used for between point X and point Y along this road or along this set of roads, to determine whether or not there was conduit put in the ground under the auspices of ARA. And if there was, then I think we've got a pretty doggone good case to show up and say, hi, we want access. So I guess, the 80,000 foot point here is there's typically always something good in some of these bills, and we need to figure out how to find those pieces, think creatively, and think out of the box on how to leverage them to benefit our business. Keep in mind that our large competitors, the incumbent telephone companies, the CLECs, and the large cable operators, have been operating under these rules, which are much more strenuous for them than it is for us, because we have a lot of this forbearance in here. They seem to be running very profitable multi-billion-dollar-a-year businesses, and it works. It may not be the best thing, but they do have subscribers, and they are making lots and lots of money. So the rules can't be that broken, is how I sort of look at it. I guess it's like looking at, I've talked to some folks where they don't want, we'll never take credit cards because we hate having to pay, American Express 2% of our bill. You know what? I don't care. I'm going to take credit cards all day long because it makes it easier for me to get that $100 from a subscriber. I don't have to worry about the check is in the mail, when the check is going to show up, or any of the other nonsense. The only thing I have to worry about is chargebacks. And if I keep my paperwork straight, my chargebacks are not even that much of a problem. But from a time value money proposition, I get my money now. I don't wait for the customer to figure out when they're going to write me a check. So I'll take every credit card, Bitcoin, Yahoo coin, Tweedledee, Tweedledum coin, whatever. If I can convert it to Benjamins or gold, I'm happy.
Yeah. Well, you throw out the good point that there's these LECs out there that have flourished under these old rules. I mean, this old rule was written, many years ago for dial tone, and as I see it, they're just trying to jam a modern technology into an old rule without really looking at the modern technology.
What they're trying to do is they're trying to make sure that Comcast, just to be very specific here, that the Comcast of the world can't come along and say that Netflix, if you want to run Netflix across our network, if let me put it this way, dear Netflix, we're Comcast, and if you want to get to our customers with your service, then you have to pay us more money. And that flies in the face of, if you're a transport internet provider, then your job is to simply push the packets and be able to push that traffic back and forth. And whatever kind of traffic engineering that you're going to apply to your network, you need to apply it uniformly across the board. In other words, as I interpret it, you can't preference Amazon Prime and dork Netflix. You have to allow both Amazon Prime and Netflix video traffic across your network at the same equal level. Now, if you just don't have the capacity for that across your network, then you could identify video traffic and pull down the quality of service on it so it's at a lower bit rate. And you're going to do that, and that's going to be, there's going to be economic play that comes in there that says whether or not your customers are happy with you. But you can't just go arbitrarily saying, yes, I'll let you connect, and no, I won't let you connect. And that's what common carrier is. Common carrier says, you're open. If you provide the service to the public, then it's available, and you have to be willing to provide it.
Mm-hmm. Well, that ties into what Dennis has always said. This is kind of the nuclear warhead for a problem that could be taken off with a snipe by a sniper. The capricious things done by the big guys to the big guys and causing the end user grief is, it's bad. But really, this was a nuclear bomb option.
And you got to look at the history, right? So when did the FCC come out with its first net neutrality order? 8, 9, 10 years ago? something like that. I forget exactly. They had a different version of this where they tried to be easier about it. And so then the big guys came and sued and lost. They lost right up to the point where basically the court said, under this particular part of your charter, FCC, we don't think you have the authority. However, there is places elsewhere in your charter and mandates from Congress that do give you the authority to do what you were trying to do. You just picked the wrong tool to try to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, yes, a sniper is a good way of trying to solve certain types of problems, but at some point it becomes a whack-a-mole. How many times do you got to call the sniper out and snipe somebody?
That's true.
Well,
It's a lot easier to come in there with a B-52 and drop a couple 100,000 pounds worth of bombs in a square mile and just solve the problem.
Go ahead, Dennis.
I think it was more along the lines of they should have, I feel anyway, they could have taken the preemptive effort to say this exact thing is not what we want. We're going to make it a rule, on an individual basis. And then it's just a matter of enforcing said rule, which is the same difference. I understand what you're saying. My other fear is that right now, by them enacting Title II, they are effectively stating that we preside over you. Now, whether or not that's right or wrong, the courts are going to end up deciding that. And it is what it is. But hopefully, in the long term, my view is that we have been unregulated. Why do we need to be regulated? What was the reason? And really the big reason, the original reason, was because of this Comcast and these guys doing these bad things. And I totally agree that the whole net neutrality on getting the bits there should be there. I totally agree with that. But the FCC basically went out of their way to come up with a way that they can enforce that, or they can try to get that without some court overruling it. And even though we're forbeared, once the power is given,
I
don't
agree.
think that you don't think that 3 years or 10 years from now they're not going to unforbear, or whatever the unplural is, the word is. It doesn't matter. Don't get me wrong. I know they have the power. They have the power. They have no oversight. They have no open policy that we, as the people they're supposed to be protecting and provisioning for, can review and say, no, this is wrong, or no, this is right. It is simply, the commissioners, they vote, and their lackeys, and anybody that can influence those people.
Sure.
And that's it.
And the same thing happens at the funny-looking building down the street called Congress.
Oh, I agree.
Right?
I agree.
Right? But I will say, Dennis, and I don't disagree with anything you just said, but I will say that we have already seen in this country when there is a reasonable marketing effort by those of us that feel that a particular piece of legislation is going to be bad for our industry and for our customer base. When we stop running our businesses for a couple of minutes and stand up and say bullshit, pardon me, I don't know if I can say that on the internet, but we can see that things do get paid attention to. And what I mean is like SOPA, right? SOPA was a bad bill. And everybody and their brother got up in arms about it and basically told those guys that like their cushy jobs in Washington and like their own personal health care plans and everything else, that if they push that thing down our throat, they're not going to get reelected. And so this comes to a slightly different problem in that we as business owners and we as service providers, we spend 19 hours of our 24-hour day running our business. We have to figure out how to carve out and spend a little bit of time being and participating in democracy and helping understand both at the local level, the state level, and at the federal level what we believe is good or is not good, and clearly articulate that and clearly communicate that. Because at the end of the day, the guys on L Street and M Street and whatever other alphabet soup street, they like their job, and their job is controlled ultimately by those who elect them and put them into position. Enough with my soapbox there. I completely agree with you, Dennis, that there are things that give me a lot of concern in this ruling from the FCC. There are things that we will not have an answer on until later this year or early next year, and there are some things we might not get answers on for several years as stuff winds through whatever court proceedings that may come out of this. And so we have to be vigilant, and we have to pay attention to what's going on there. One of the biggest things I worry about is, am I now going to have to start charging Universal Service Fund fees or other kinds of fees that on top of what I'm already charging, for internet? And is that going to now push my price, the landed cost to my subscriber, is that going to push that price up 15 to 20% based on current USF contribution rates? And how much more detailed reporting are we going to have to go deal with on Form 477s or some other new reporting format that the FCC wants to come up with? And I agree with you, Dennis, that there's nothing that would prevent them 2 years from now from coming back and saying, well, 100,000 size subscriber base is too big. We're gonna bring that down. We're only going to forbear those providers that have 1,000 subscribers or less. Everybody else is going to have to now do all the other things that we were forbearing on in the future. And then you're going to look at folks like Steve and others are all of a sudden instantly going to have this much higher regulatory burden than what they were doing a year before. So there are problems in there, but I think that we also have to look at how can we leverage the silver lining things today to push our business forward, and how do we start thinking about running our business under those rules.
Right.
My big point, my other little comment there is guys, the Internet's been running as a commercial thing for what, 20, 25 years roughly? Let's see, I think I had a Netcom account back in 1995, 1994. And we've had a good run where there's been virtually no regulation on us at any level. Let's be realistic. At some point, the government wants their VIG. They're going to figure out how to do this. And we to some extent, can bitch and moan and fight about it, or we can figure out how to operate within it to our benefit.
Right. And that's particularly why I wanted to have you on the show, because just a lot of negative thought about it, but you got to work within the confines of the hand you're dealt.
Steve, if U.S. West, Mountain Bell, U.S. West, Quest, CenturyLink can be a multi-billion-dollar a year company in our state, selling internet and selling telephone services and private line services and all those things, actually be operating under more stringent rules than what this presents for us today, and making frickin' money, why can't you and I?
Exactly. So, in reality, from your standpoint, the pull attachment rights are huge. It's just going to be a battle with the co-ops who think that they're exempt from everything. The other one is there are other companies that have lived within the confines of regulation and have made piles of cash. I think you mentioned one time, to make a small fortune in this industry, you have to start off with a large fortune, which I laughed at, but it's relatively true. But any other positive aspects of this? I mean, hopefully we'll get right-of-way or access to right-of-way that open conduits or dark fibers that are funded by the federal government. I hope that would be included in it. I haven't had time to read it, but any other positives that you may see for the small business, John?
Well, I mean, I'm dealing with a bankruptcy proceeding right now with one of our clients, and One of the other benefits of this is that under the federal bankruptcy laws, we're a creditor to this client. They're a fairly good-sized client, and I think they're going to come through the bankruptcy Chapter 11 proceeding just fine. But that debtor, us as a service provider, as a creditor, we are actually able to operate as a utility in the bankruptcy proceeding. So there was actually a specific motion filed. It's called a utility motion that lists who are the utilities, and those utilities operate under a slightly different set of rules compared to the other creditors towards that business. And the benefit for us as a utility is that, hey, our job is simple. Our job is to provide a service to you every month, and if you don't pay the bill, we get to turn you off. Well, in a bankruptcy proceeding, the court usually comes along and says, hey, everybody that's a creditor, you have to stop doing anything that would be detrimental to the debtor, and you have to seek court permission before you can do anything. So prior to this bill, it could be easily argued that we were not a utility, and so our equipment that's at the location and the service, we could not turn off until we spent legal money to go get permission from the bankruptcy court, and then we'd have to also go file for permission to come in and take out our equipment that might be there. All of that at a much more greater expense than we should have to endure, and all at our own expense. But as a utility, as a common carrier, as the same thing as CenturyLink, we're now a utility. Another piece.
How does that give me comfort?
Because now you know that
customer's house.
Now you know that you are not going to be necessarily an indentured servant for the next 90 days, right? Because you would be under a court order to continue providing service to that customer that's in bankruptcy, continue to providing service until such time as the court gave you permission to turn them off.
But does that guarantee you'll get paid?
Doesn't guarantee you'll get paid. What it guarantees and helps you with, Steve, is that you don't get to keep giving them milk and not getting paid for it, but you still got to spend the money to go buy the milk and give it to them. Now, as a utility, you can say, hey, you haven't paid your bill. You've got 10 days to pay your bill, and if you don't pay, I'm turning you off. But you don't have to go spend $1,000 on legal fees to go get the court to say it's okay to do that.
Aha.
Because if you do something that pisses off the bankruptcy court, trust me, that is not a place you want to be in an unhappy situation on. Doesn't guarantee you're going to get paid. It simply makes it easier for you to stop hemorrhaging loss and have legal precedents to stop hemorrhaging that loss.
Uh-huh.
Another place that being a utility is beneficial is the National Electric Code. There's a piece in the National Electric Code that says, at least certainly here in New Mexico, their interpretation of it here is, I do not have to get a permit and I do not have to have inspected my electronics that I attach to the electrical grid, my remote cabinet or whatever, because it is under the exclusive control of the utility. And as long as it's under the exclusive control of the utility, the general feeling is that utility is going to do things that isn't going to cause itself its own problem, right? And so, for example, I have remote cabinets that I have in neighborhoods where I have fiber that comes up to that cabinet. I have a meter pedestal that connects to P&M Electric. From the pedestal to the P&M Electric pole is something that has to be permitted and inspected. But from that meter ped to my remote cabinet, I don't need a permit and I don't need inspection. because it's under my exclusive control and I'm a utility.
Huh. That could be huge.
And yes, that reduces costs. That reduces time to construction. It also says that because it is under my exclusive control, I did not even have to install a UL listed cabinet. Now, I'm not advocating that we go down to our local sheet metal shop and bend up something ourselves that's cheesy and chintzy. I mean, I have a really nice telco grade cabinet, but the reason that telco grade cabinet wasn't UL listed was because it was being bought and sold for utilities who didn't care if it was UL listed because it was under their exclusive control. So, I mean, there are little bits, and I'm continuing to discover more and more of the places where being able to stand up and say, I'm just like Ma Bell, I'm just like T-Mobile, is being beneficial in the sense of how I engage or how we communicate with another party. When I show up as just a wireless ISP that wants to put something on an antenna on a rooftop of a multi-tenant commercial building, it's a hit or miss whether I'll get permission or not.
I got a good one for you.
Yeah, go for it.
This is a good one. What about I'm trying to say this without, as you know, we have NDAs just like anybody else. I'm just trying to say it.
Yeah.
Make sure I word it correctly. What about a county or state-owned or municipal-owned tower? So you say, in our area, so one instance would be water towers. Water towers in our area are controlled by the water districts. The water districts are basically overseen by the county, but they are really separate entities, if that makes sense. Would that water tower or tower structure that is owned by one of those districts, etc., be considered right of way or anything like that?
Could be. So, I mean, the first thing I would do is look at that water tower and determine whether or not there's anybody else on it.
Well, let's assume there's not.
Okay, so then you're going to be the complete pathfinder, groundbreaking person.
Right.
Now, is there any water tower in that same jurisdictional area that has somebody on it?
So the issue would come in is that in certain circumstances, we have water towers that are owned by the city, and the city leases space to sell companies, etc. And in those particular instances, it's pretty easy because the city owns it, it's municipal owned, and they are already leasing to private companies. Therefore, typically, at that point, you're said and done. As long as they offer it to you for a fair or equivalent price, you really can't complain. But these are specific things. Like I said, I'm using this example as this water districts where, I would have to check with actually who owns the dang thing.
Right.
The way
who owns it? Who owns the dirt?
How's this? You as a homeowner, being in the water district area and being provided by water district utility, okay, you have to pay the water district every month. So you think the water district is basically either a municipal or county project. They may be divided up into different districts based on trying to ensure the systems, maybe the systems are separate, as well as billing, etc. But in all actuality, the consumers pay for it. The end people pay for it. The question is who manages it. And usually they're managed by themselves, but you would think that they would have started by some type of county or municipal project.
Or they could have been started as a co-op.
Okay.
So Dennis, what's your question?
Well, the question is does being a utility give us the right to go, hey, we want to put our radios up on this tower, and they basically don't have a say of, no, you can't. They just have to come up with an agreed-upon price and mounting.
So I don't know if it gives you a right to do that, or if it gives you...
But would that be considered a right-of-way? Would that be considered pole attachment?
Well, I don't think it would be. I mean, I don't think you could stretch pole attachment to water tank attachment, because a water tank is not necessarily a pole. I mean, you could potentially argue it's a really fat pole, but
yeah. But I mean, that's what I'm saying though.
I think the spirit and the intent of pole attachment versus tank attachment. But I think what it does give you is it gives you a different standing and a different posture in opening those initial negotiations, because if you show up as Billy Bob ISP, you're just Billy Bob ISP. But if you show up as we are a utility, pursuant to federal rules, all of a sudden now the paper pushers in that water utility authority area are potentially going to be like, oh, wait a minute. Because I would be willing to bet you're going to catch them off guard, and they're not going to necessarily know about all these FCC rules. But if you show up with sort of the appearance of being a subject matter expert and saying, we are a common carrier, we are subject to the new FCC rules that just came out in March of 2015, and those rules give us access to poles and right-of-way and conduit and other similar kinds of structures and fixtures to attach and connect our broadband services. And as you know, Mr. Water Utility Chairman, it is federal national policy that we are to have 100 megabits to every home in this country by 2020. And so as the local utility, we are doing our best to meet this national policy goal. We would love to engage with you and see how we could build a mutually cooperative relationship and be able to use this water tank.
That might be a lot more interesting, because, like I said, I know plenty of locations in which the water districts and the water utilities, they're very friendly to WISPs. As a matter of fact, I know some I've mentioned this with Steve before. We've actually worked with a number of water districts and local WISPs to basically replace their old SCADA gear, their command and control system. And we replace it, and then they get free rent. I mean, just everything works out. It's just such a beautiful thing. But if they don't have a reason to, and this is the problem that we find a lot of times is, hey, our SCADA gear is working. We don't have to relicense it. We don't have to buy new ones. So we don't have any major expenditures that we really need to spend that would help us. So we just don't want to deal with you. And that's usually what happens. They just don't want to deal with. We're not interested in you doing anything with us because we don't think we have to, and we don't really care to.
Right.
And,
so I mean, you want to so the little verbiage I just gave a minute ago might cause them enough moment of pause to think that they have to deal with you, or at least at the very least they're worried that they might have to. And so, can you get them to the table? I mean, I look at it this way. It's very crass, maybe the way I'm going to say this, but part of the way
we the internet.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
There are little kids listening everywhere, and so I look at when we're trying to come up with a new product or a new pricing, or we're trying to get a particular type of client or whatever. I look at two things as to how we're going to succeed. One is technical. We need to be technologically better than the other guy. And two, how do we appeal to our customers' better sense of greed? And what I mean by that is, can we offer them something either in cash or in kind that solves a problem for them, whether it's a real problem or a perceived problem? I don't really care, but if they think it's a problem, hey, we'll try to fix it, and brings value to them without them having to open up their checkbook. For example, I go into multi-tenant buildings and I say, hey, I want to put a radio on the roof because I need to service this tenant. First of all, I get the tenant to get the permission just to do that. And then I come back to the property manager and go, by the way, while we're doing this, if you'd like, we'll be happy to put an access point up in your main lobby for free internet for anybody that's in the main lobby or in a little coffee shop or whatever. And if you want, I'll put up to 5 cameras in your building and give you access to those cameras 7x24 so you can see what's happening in your building. Sure, I might spend $500 to $1,000, maybe a little bit more, a little bit less, depending on it. But now I just got a property manager that loves me because I've just done something to help make their building more attractive for their own internal use and reduce some of their operating expense. Because I'll give the property manager's office free internet, and I'll give them a POTS line. I mean, what's a POTS line? Whoop-de-doo. It's just a SIP session. I can do lots of SIP sessions. Shove it in an asterisk box, and you can do it for free almost. They're hardly ever going to use the dang thing, but they think it's worth it. So why not? So my point is on the water stuff, is that Homeland Security has a big push to make sure that every water tank, every drinking water facility has quality video surveillance so that someone doesn't come along and drop something bad into the water. Steve and I have a mutual friend of ours out in California that every year probably pulls in a couple of $1 million throwing cameras up on water tanks and water reservoirs, and it's all Homeland Security money. And he does it through wireless, and he does it through wired and whatever, and in some of those deals, he gets to put up his own little structure and put an AP on it.
Matter of fact, for the local water company out here that lets me broadcast off of their tanks for gratis, I told him, hey, I'll put up cameras for you, and I put up one for a site that they had that my equipment's on, one to keep an eye on my gear as well as theirs. And then the other one is they had their own SCADA gear failing them, and the tank was overfilling and flushing all the water out the side of the tank. So I just finished up putting up a camera on that tank and pointed it towards the overflow drain and the meter on the side of the tank so they can log in and check that remotely. And, they gave me access to their towers for free, but I just threw that out there as a value add to them for, being so gracious to me. So that's one way you could, just like John says, create a perceived problem. And, the Homeland Security thing, my water company I deal with, I don't think that they've been made aware of, or if that's true. But I help them out. They're ahead of the game now. So in your case, Dennis, I think that, if you're consulting with people that are wanting to get on water tanks, throw out the cheap video solution.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we've done plenty of projects like that. It's just the one that gets me is the water district has water towers in these great spots, and basically they don't have any reason to talk to you. They don't want to deal with you. They don't want to, to work with you. But I can see the point of, hey, we are a utility per FCC regulations, and FCC, we're supposed to give broadband to all these people, and because of that, we want to see how we can work with you. And just saying that, hey, we're a local. Try this one. We are a local internet utility. Just that little statement right there.
No, don't even say that. We are a local telecommunications utility.
There you go.
Right? Because telecommunications conjures a different view than internet.
There you go. So that's even better. That's even better. So there you go.
Everything on the internet is an app. Voice is an app.
Yeah.
Right.
We're an application service provider.
And if you go back to 2000, I think it was 2010 or 2011, President Obama, there's an executive order that basically started off the U.S. Ignite stuff. There's an executive order that came out of the president, executive branch, that said that, federal agencies need to do things and put things together to reduce the costs to broadband providers so that they can have a better opportunity to service. Reduce the cost of access to federal land and on top of federal buildings, et cetera, et cetera. And I think, there's always a multi-prong approach. First is I've always found that local politicians don't necessarily want to get on the wrong side of the table with a regional or national politician, because they all have aspirations of growing up, and to grow up they sometimes need to be pulled up by their regional or national buddies. Second is they don't want to look like a bad guy. And third, they don't want to have to deal, governmental agencies or quasi-governmental agents don't really want to have to deal with litigation. They're more litigation adverse than you think. They might posture and threaten a lot, but when you actually come back and hand them the lawsuit, they want to sit down tomorrow and go to the settlement table pretty damn quickly. So, there's a number of ways to take this information and craft it to a positive outcome. Another thing I would do is I would actually do a grassroots marketing. Go to somebody like marketbroadband.com who goes to the WISPA shows and say, here's a water tank. I want to know all the addresses within 5-mile circle of this water tank that I know I could get really good wireless to. And then do a marketing campaign to those people and say, hey, would you like really good new broadband high-speed internet service from your local telecommunications utility, Billy Bob ISP or Billy Bob Telecommunications? And if so, could you help with the wire guys to get us on the tower? And here's all this wonderful stuff about getting on that attaching to a tower, whether it's a welded connection, it's a band you magnetically mount, however you physically attach to that tower, that water tank, is okie dokie. And get them to start calling. Remember, a co-op is at least in our state, a co-op is a legal structure that is by its membership. And so if the membership votes a particular way, the management of the co-op must do it.
Yeah, that's in a perfect world. Out here where I'm at the co-op, they do whatever they want. Who cares what the members say?
Up until the moment you turn around and go, I got 60% of the membership signing a petition, and if you guys don't go this way, we'll go see what the court has to say about it.
That's true.
And then the co-op will turn around and go, shit, and they'll either launch their own marketing nonsense, or they'll turn around and capitulate.
There you go.
Well, I think we've derived quite a bit of decent stuff that's going to come out of Title II, we hope. Hopefully the forbearance won't be yanked right away. But, guys, it's not the end of the world. Yes, we'll probably have to hire someone to just do regulatory compliance in the future, but hopefully by that time, like John has mentioned, that these old school LECs out there have made millions and billions of dollars through these rules in the past. Maybe we can get to that point where we can afford such. But with that, I think that it's time to wrap up the show. Dennis, you got anything else?
I think we're good, bud.
All right. John, any parting words?
Join WISPA. Become a member of WISPA and think out of the box and build the network. Let's make America the best broadband-connected country in the world.
Yep, amen. Well, I want to thank John Brown for getting on the phone with us again. Some good insight on the pros to small business ISPs. If you could derive anything like that from this, I think you could. And I want to thank Dennis for hosting the show and being the co-host. And with that, we'll wrap up the show. We'll talk to you guys next week. I'll be off, but Dennis should be on.
Yep.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for listening to ISP Radio. We hope you've gained new insights and additional wisdom in our industry as well as your business.